I'd like to start with a beracha. Tonight's class is all about berachot. And you're asking yourself, Pesach? Is that what we came to hear tonight? Tonight's class is really an off-speed pitch. It's something unique. Be'ezrat Hashem, I'm hoping that we have the proper words to give this over. Here we go. Kidarkenu b'kodesh, Baruch Ata Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, sha'akol nihiyah bidvaro. Amen. Rabotai, tonight, I'm asking you to bear with me. In the beginning of the share, you're going to be thinking to yourself, it's a week before Pesach. Why is he giving over a share on Birkat HaIlanot? Harav, do you mind if you sit over there so I could talk to someone like this? I can focus. No, I'm saying I can focus. Thank you, and much better this way, if you don't mind.
So do I.
Okay. So if you, in the beginning of tonight's share, you're going to be wondering, why is he giving a share on Birkat HaIlanot? We're a week before Pesach. This Shabbat is the unofficial Shabbat HaGadol. It's not Shabbat HaGadol. Really, next Shabbat is Shabbat HaGadol. But unofficially, this is the Shabbat HaGadol. Because the rabbis can't wait until next Shabbat to start giving over the halachot to Pesach, because that night's the Seder. It's a little bit late. What are you going to do at that point? So therefore, Be'ezrat Hashem comes this coming Tuesday night. I'd like to be able to dedicate the first half of the class for the incredible halachot of Erev Pesach, Shechal Liot B'Shabbat, which is this year. And then I'd like to be able to talk on the shmuz side of things, on the great nikudot of how someone is to come into Pesach with the right mindset. That's going to be Tuesday night's class, Tuesday night's shmuz. But tonight's Thursday night. Tonight's the share. So you might be thinking, why is he going with Birkat HaIlanot? There's so many beautiful topics that are nogea to Pesach. Listen to me well. Don't get thrown off by the first half of the share. Don't shut off the video. The second half of the share is going to take the halachic base and elevate it to fantastic yidiot al pi Kabbalah. And those yidiot are going to be megalet to us a chidush and a sod, a secret, that is going to get us to come in this year to Pesach with a keli of beracha like we've maybe never handled before. I felt for this alone, it was worth to give over this secret a week before Pesach, because this must be done before Pesach, not after, too late, and you'll find out. But if we can get this tonight, we mamish could be mekabel a sod atzum to be able to come into Pesach and be zochet to shefa and beracha ad beli dai. I'm telling you, and even that's an understatement. So please have the patience, bear with me. But Be'ezrat Hashem, I'm hoping that we'll pull it together and really big payoff. Here we go. Rabotai, the first portion of the shir is a halacha shir. And here we go. We're starting with a famous Gemara. The Gemara Berachot Mem Gimel Amud Bet. Gemara says the following. Listen to the statement. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Hai man de nafik biyome Nisan. The guy that's going to go out on the days of the month of Nisan. V'chazeh. And what does he see? Ilane. Beautiful trees. The Mikah milavleve. That these trees are blossoming. They are flowering. They are budding in the flower stage before the fruit appears. Omer he should say when he sees this beautiful sight, Baruch shelo chiser be'olamo klum. Hashem, you're the Mekor HaBracha. You thought I was going to say blessed, didn't you? You thought I was going to translate the word Baruch to be blessed, right? Baruch atah Hashem, blessed art you, God. No, that's not where we're going with this. Baruch, really, it doesn't mean blessed. It means milashon berecha. It's an overflowing pool of blessing. Baruch is you're the Mekor HaBeracha. You are the source of all blessing. That's the proper translation of the word Baruch. How many times a day we say that word? We don't even know what we're saying. We keep thinking blessed. It's not blessed. It's the Mekor HaBeracha is you, Hashem. Baruch atah. You, Hashem, are the Mekor HaBeracha, the overwhelming, overflowing, Ma'ayan HaMitgaber of blessing. Hashem. What do you say when you see this magnificent sight, the blossoming of fruit trees? Baruch shelo chiser ba'olamo klum. You, Hashem, you're the Makor of all blessing. You didn't give us a lacking of anything in this world. You provided even that which is luxurious. Fruits are luxurious. If you never ate a fruit in your life, you can live. The Jews in Siberia never saw any fruit. They lived. To have a fruit is a luxury. It's not a necessity. It's the luxuries that Hashem provided in this world. Ubarabo, biriot tovot, Hashem. Beautiful creations you created. HaIlanot tovot. Magnificent good trees that give forward such delicious fruit. Litnaot bahem bnei adam. Unbelievable. This is what we know as the blessing of Birkat HaIlanot. Now guys, when the poskim delve into the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, they really take apart every word. Every word in this statement has a halachic ramification. Every word. What was the opener? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Haiman denafik biyome Nisan. Wow. That means that Yomeh is by daytime. So does this mean that Birkat HaIlanot could only be done by day, not by night? Nisan is the month of Nisan. Does that mean that the only month you could do Birkat HaIlanot is only in Nisan? What happens if you have the latecomers that wake up Pesach Sheni? Do they have a Pesach Sheni for Birkat HaIlanot as well? Is there a makeup? Can you do it in the ER? Could you do it in Adar? What about the Zaras, right? This Rizim guy, he doesn't want to wait for Nisan. He's so excited after he hears this class, he's going to say, wow, I got to get out there and do it ASAP. So he ends up doing it on Motzai Purim. Is it okay to do it in Adar? Listen to these words. Yome Nisan, the days of Nisan. Is it Dafka days? Is it only in the month of Nisan that we can do Birkat HaIlanot? Very interesting. Now take a look at the words again. We keep going with the words. V'chazeh, said the Gemara, ilaneh. That's plural. Trees. Ilaneh. Does that mean that I need multiple trees in order to get the blessing done? If I only come across one fruit tree and it's in the stage of blossoming, milavleve, is that okay enough? Is that already enough? That I could be yotzeh, this wonderful concept of Birkat HaIlanot with one tree? Or maybe does ilaneh actually mean trees? Maybe I actually need a few trees in order to properly do the mitzvah of Birkat HaIlanot. Every word that Rabbi Yehuda gave us over in the Gemara is up for debate. Ad kedei kach that the poskim go to the debate on every word in this statement, ad the bottom line halacha. Amazing. Amazing. So let's really take this apart. If you take a look in Shulchan Aruch, Maran in Siman Resh Chavav, in Or Chaim, Maran dedicates a complete siman to Birkat HaIlanot. Do you know how many halachot, how many simanim are in Birkat HaIlanot? One. Only one siman. But he makes a siman out of it on its own special measure. Now this is odd. You see, because Maran talks about all the other birachot that are called Birkat Re'iyah. There are many different Birkat Re'iyah. Many different phenomenons that are magnificent in the creation of Hashem, that when you come by and see them, there are blessings to be made upon seeing them. The Yam HaGadol, great mountains, a rainbow, all these things are Birkat Re'iyah. So too, when it comes to Birkat HaIlanot, you take a look and see the sprouting of the trees in the month of Nisan. Upon the sight of such a phenomenon, you make a blessing. And yet, all the berachot of Re'iyah, Maran puts together in one siman, and the beracha, Birkat HaIlanot, he dedicates its own siman with one halacha. And the halacha simply brings very much similar to the words of the Gemara, with the blessing that's made in the month of Nisan, in the days of Nisan, Yomed Nisan, at the time of Milav Leveh, that you're makir, the flower coming forward, you make this blessing as the Gemara brought us. It's very interesting that Maran dedicated an entire siman for this Birkat Re'iyah over all the rest. And actually, the Nosei Kelim talk about this. They say, wow, if Maran did this, it must be that there's something unique about this Birkat Re'iyah over all the other typical birachot of Re'iyah that we find in Shulchan Aruch. What is so unique about Birkat HaIlanot? And that's really the crux of tonight's share. And we're going to start on a halachic base, and then we're going to graduate to a Kabbalistic base, tie it into a Pesach, and walk out of here chasing down the first fruit tree we can find. I'm telling you, when you hear what we're going to say tonight, it's going to be be'emet, an experience. So let's take a look at this, Rabotai. Amazing. The Aruch HaShulchan, when it comes to the laws of Birkat HaIlanot, in Siman Reish Chavav, right in the beginning, the Aruch HaShulchan actually wants to know, why dafka do we make the beracha on the trees only on trees that give off fruit? Why don't we make it on all trees? What is so significant about the fruit factor that the tree gives forward for that tree to be the one that's blessed, Birkat HaIlanot, over all the other trees? Maybe I should go to the great oak trees in England. You ever see those trees? They're towering. They're like these huge monsters. Those are the king of all trees. Maybe that's the tree that I should be making Birkat HaIlanot. Says Aruch HaShulchan, no. We know very clearly that we're talking here only about fruit trees. But Hagufa, why is that? What is special about the fruit tree that's the go-to for Birkat HaIlanot? Interesting. Says Aruch HaShulchan, because the fruit tree demonstrates the chesed of Hashem. Because like I mentioned before, says Aruch HaShulchan, you don't need fruit to live. And therefore the fruits that were put into this world were here lehenot mehem. This was given to you for pleasure, not for survival. That's real chesed. And if you ever heard any of Rabbi Miller's tapes, he was a gaon, he was famous in that very point. How he dissected the apple. How Hashem made it this magnificent red, delicious color. And it's so eye-drawing. And then on the inside you have seeds, and those seeds will fall out, land on the ground, and sprout up another tree. And the tartness of the apple is a perfect balance between the crunch of the actual meat of the apple and the tartness of the juice of the apple. You have to hear Rabbi Miller. He is the Gaon Zechet Tzadik Lebracha in these areas. But he's showing us this point. The amount of chesed that went into one apple, went into one orange, went into one pear. I mean, it's unbelievable. If you hear those tapes, you fly. Says Aruch HaShulchan, that's why Birkat HaIlanot is done on the fruit trees. Because it's done on the Hesed of Borei Olam. The thank you is not just on the tree, but on the Chesed that Hashem demonstrated through these trees. Beautiful. Beautiful idea. Therefore, they're the go-to. They're the ones that get the blessing. Not the big oak. That shows Gevura. That shows Din. No, we want mercy. We want Chesed. That's where the Beracha goes, on the Chesed, on the mercy, not on the judgment, not on the Gevura. Wow. Amazing. Rabotai, I want to share with you that the Piskei Teshuvot was known to say, and you can find this in Halichot Shlomo, Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Gadol Hador, he would actually boast with a certain pride, and he would tell people that he was always zahir and very careful with Birkat HaIlanot in an incredible way. He actually boasts that since the day of his bar mitzvah, he never missed a year in his life that he didn't make sure to do Birkat HaIlanot. To him, Birkat HaIlanot was something, an unbelievable, unique experience. And he would never miss. He was Zahir Me'od. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Zechet Tzadik Lebracha. And what's amazing is, what did he see so special? I mean, I don't want that to come out wrong. It's unreal. We're talking about Birkat HaIlanot, but he must have saw something unique. Like Maran that saw something unique to make it the siman of its own. Let's try to highlight tonight something deeper than what just simply meets the eye. What is so special about this? So if you take a look at the Mishnah Berurah over there in Reish Chavav, Sif Katan Bet, he writes that we're looking for the stage, the moment that it begins the blossoming. We're looking for Milav Leveh, the beginning of that unbelievable chesed, where Hashem is first forming the flower. That's going to be that foundation, that base, that the fruit is going to be able to sprout out of. It is the tziniut cover that's going to wrap itself around what the future fruit is going to come out. At the beginning of the chesed, we already jump and we make the beracha of Birkat HaIlanot. Amazing. It's interesting. There's a Tshuvot Sefer Lahorot Natan. He writes over there in Chelekei Siman Chet that when it comes to old, sick fruit trees, it's better not to do Birkat HaIlanot on it. Although it's giving fruit, but it's one of those crab apple trees. It's giving sickly fruit. And the fruit over there is not demonstrating Hashem's chesed. We're really looking for a good fruit tree, a delicious tree that gives off real edible fruit, because that's when you really say, you see the chesed, you see the delicious, wonderful care of detail that Hashem did when giving fruit to the world. And it's because of that he says, better stay away from those sick trees. Sometimes you come across these old fruit trees that's in someone's backyard. They already cemented around the bark because they were too scared to chop it down. But it already has been dying for years. That's not the fruit tree we're talking about, says Lahorot Natan. He says, find yourself a tree that taka gives good fruit. There's the chesed. That's where you want to go to. Very interesting. He says, if you find a sickly tree, don't make a beracha, he says. Don't make a beracha. Don't go be mishabech borei olam on sickly things. So it's a strong, it's a strong idea. I could take this idea to many places. I know people that spend a lot of money on themselves, but when it comes to their mitzvot And when it comes to be Mishabeach Borei Olam, Yaitse. Rabbi, what's the cheapest lulav and etrog set you have? But what do you mean? The lulav looked like it came out of a fahakt chainik, and the etrog has more spots on it than a teenager. I mean, what do you buy? Yeah, right. What's the big difference? I got the $10 set. For your kid, you got it. You got the chinuch set. What, for your 6-year-old? You're using that? That's the Zekeli Van Vehu. Everybody knows the famous Ravid. The Ravid says by etrog yavesh, the reason why a dried out etrog is no good is because of the pasuk lo hametim yahalaluka. Lo hametim. It's a Ravid. He says it straight out. Lo hametim yahalaluka. The dead cannot praise God. Don't come with a dead etrog. That's really what the Lehorot Natan is saying here. Don't come to a dead tree and try to come now and say, oh, Hashem, your chesed. Ay, what chesed? The thing is half tight. What are you talking about? What chesed? So he says, don't make the bracha. He says, look, he doesn't make the bracha. He doesn't say it, but I tell you, if the Ravid was sitting right here, he would scream on the dead tree like he screamed on the dead etrog. Lo hametim yahalaluka. That's not the way to be Mishabeach Hashem. If you spend so much on yourself, how much more would you and should you spend on your Creator and His praises? The bring Shevach v'hoda'ah Hashem. We gotta go. Ad B'lidai. We want Ad B'lidai, but we're not ready to give Ad B'lidai. It's the people that are ready to give Ad B'lidai that they get Ad B'lidai. Gentlemen, you got your money's worth already. I'm telling you, this is a big yesod. It's a big idea. We can take this and make a share out of this. By the way, tonight's share, I should have mentioned at the beginning, Mechila, much and many of the ideas and the Mar Mekomot are from a shmooze that I heard from Rabbi Gladstein in 2016. Long, mamish. I love this share, so I held on to it, and I developed it, and then built out a few of the ideas that we're going to talk about according to my Rebbe, Reb Rabinovich from Eretz Yisrael. I want to talk to you about the Neshamot HaGalmudot. We're hitting big stuff tonight, but I first want to give the credit where credit is due. Hashem should bless him. Rebbe Daniel Gladstein, he's a Yedid Nefesh. He's something very special that we have in Klal Yisrael. Okay, so let's get to the Nakuda now, Rabotai. So we know we need a fruit tree. We know it should be edible fruit, good fruit, alive. We also know that it should be melav leveh, like the Mishnah Berurah told us, the beginning point of sprouting. We know that too. And then we also know that the Gemara said, ilaneh. Ilaneh is plural. Go out and when you see trees in the days of Nisan sprouting, make the blessing. Does that mean two? If I only have one tree, I can't make the blessing? So this is a very interesting idea. The Piskei Teshuvot in Siman Resh Chavav, he talks about this very point. He says, do I need trees in plural, at least two? Or maybe one would be enough? So what's interesting is, comes the Kaf HaChaim. And the Kaf HaChaim is really the focus of tonight's share. Maybe not from what we're about going to say now, but what we will say. Step one of tonight's Kaf HaChaim is, on the question, do you need two trees or is it enough one? The Kaf HaChaim says, listen, you do need two fruit trees, but they don't need to be two separate species. Okay? Meaning, you need two trees, but they could be two apple trees. They don't need to be two separate fruits. They could be the same fruit, but two, not one. This is what the Kaf HaChaim writes in Reish Chavav, Sif Katan Bet. Yes, the Gemara was meduyak, ilaneh, meaning two trees, but not two species. But what's very interesting is that if you take a look at the Chidah in Moreh Be'etzba, he writes over there the following. Listen to this, guys. Very interesting lashon, and you'll be medayik with me. Yishtadel, make an effort, says the Chida. Livarech Birkat Ilanot bime Nisan, in the days of the month of Nisan. V'hamedaktikim hamakpidim sheyeh b'Nisan dafka v'yeh shtei ilanot. The medaktikim sounds like that mikaradin, really you'd be able to do a Birkat HaIlanot on one tree. But the medaktikim, those that look to do mitzvot perfectly, they know that it's better to do it with two. It's very interesting. The Lashon over here, and this is the way that Tzitz Eliezer also is medayik in the Chida, the Lashon over here sounds that really Mikar Adin, not like the Kaf HaChaim. Even if you had one fruit tree, you'll be yotzeh with making Birkat Ilanot on it. However, the Medaktikim, everyone agrees it's better to make it on two, because Lamaisa, the Gemara does say, Ilane. Very interesting idea. But one would actually be good enough. It's interesting, the Maharsham, he actually said you do need two trees, like the Kaf HaChaim. Rosh Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was makpid on making Birkat Ilanot on two trees. Let's remember, he was the one that was Zahir. He was makpid to make on two trees, which is also very interesting. But the Piskei Teshuvot says, yes, even though these great Gidolim were all makpid to make on two trees, but mikaradin, if you only have one fruit tree, you're allowed to make the beracha on one tree, and you're still yotzeh. It's interesting, the Revavot Ephraim brings in the name, not in the name, excuse me, Revavot Ephraim, and Chelik Chet, Siman Ayin Zayin, he brings that Rav Moshe Feinstein, one year, found a tree, a fruit tree, and he made a beracha on one tree, Rav Moshe Feinstein. Because mi'ikar adin, it's okay. If you have two, okay, areza meshubach. But mikar adin, one tree is okay. Very interesting. Okay, what was the other word there in the Gemara that we were contemplating? Yomeh Nisan. The days of Nisan. And remember, I told you that both are up for grabs. Do you really need Yomeh? Do you need to make Birkat HaIlanot only by day? What happens if someone does it at night? Is it okay? Nisan, does it really need to be only the month of Nisan? What happens if he does it in ER? Okay. So it's interesting. They bring a raya from Chacham Ovadia. This is the Revavot Ephraim, Chelik Vav, Siman, Taf, Nun, Bet. He brings a raya from Chacham Ovadia. Listen to this raya. It's a wild raya. They once asked Chacham Ovadia if women are mechuyavot in the blessing of Birkat Ilanot. Chacham Ovadia said, yes. Yes, they are. Says the Revavot Ephraim, now let's get out the thumbs. We know that women are turot from any mitzvah that's Zman Gerama, that is held to time sensitive. Wait one second. If you're allowed to make it by day and by night, so then it makes sense that it's not Zman Gerama. Okay? If it's not Zman Gerama, women are mechuyavot. But wait one second. If you would not be allowed to make it at night and only by day, then it would be Zman Gerama, and then women would be pturot. So if Chacham Ovadia told us that women are chayavot, it has to be, says the Revavot Ephraim, that you're allowed to make Birkat HaIlanot not only by day, by night as well. Hence, it's not a mitzvah that's Zman Gerama, and that's why the rabbi said that women are mechuyavot as well. What an interesting raya. You see how they took it kacha? They took it backwards. But nonetheless, the Revavot Ephraim wants to prove from this psak of the great Chacham Ovadia that be'emet you can make Birkat Ilanot at night as well. And therefore not a mitzvah Zman Gerama. Hence the rabbi said women are mechuyavot in Birkat Ilanot. That's very interesting. Very interesting way to look at things. Okay, gentlemen, till now we did the halachic piece, put on your seatbelts. Here's where we cross over the line. Here's where the fireworks begin. This was our intro. Comes the Kaf HaChaim, I warned you. Comes the Kaf HaChaim in Siman Resh Chavav, Sif Katan Dalid, and he says something amazing. Yomeh de Nisan, the days of Nisan. All days? Does that include Shabbat? Can you make Birkat HaIlanot on Shabbat? You're walking home from shul. It's a beautiful Shabbat afternoon. Suddenly you take a look and you see that the fruit tree coming out of your friend's garden is starting to be melavleve. And that was my first moment of ri'iyah, my first sighting of such a beautiful sight of his fruit tree. And it's actually flowering and blossoming. Can I make Birkat HaIlanot on Shabbat? Says the Kaf HaChaim, no. Why not? Well, he says, at first glance, I'll tell you the simple reasons. While you're making the beracha, you might actually lean over and try to smell the flower. And if you do so, you might pull it off. And that already is an isur. That's problem number one. You may come to take the flower and pluck it off to smell it. And therefore, asur. The second problem, you might come to move the tree. You might come so close to make the beracha, to be able to see that the flowers are really blossoming off of the really budding, that you might come to lean on the tree, or move the tree, or push the tree, or touch the tree in the process of Birkat HaIlanot, examining the flower, making sure, is it taka melavleve? You know, a lot of times you have guys, I don't know if you've ever been to a shop buying an etrog. Even if that etrog was once clean, give it a day or two, you have enough people all over it, mamish. You know, it's amazing. You might come touch the tree. You might come push the tree. Says the Kaf HaChaim, you cannot make Birkat HaIlanot Shabbat. You might come to pluck the flower or push and move the tree. And then says the Kaf HaChaim, those are the Rabbanans. But now I want to tell you something even worse. You may come to be over on the Dioraita. Dioraita? What Dioraita? Birkat HaIlanot on Shabbat? Birkat HaRi'iyah? What Dioraita? Says the Kaf HaChaim, Ayom V'Nora. He says, you're being borer on Shabbat. Borer? How am I being borer? He says, at the moment that you go and say the beracha, Birkat HaIlanot, all the nishamot that are trapped in the flowering of the tree, that moment they give them the right to escape and come back up and enter Shamayim. You're being borer the neshama from the perach, releasing them from this world and entering the next. Thus is borer on Shabbat. Interesting. Is that called taking the psolet from the ochel, or the ochel from the psolet? But nonetheless, that's what the Kaf HaChaim holds, and that's what he says. I know no one's going to believe this, so I'm going to say the Mar Makom again, so that they only throw pebbles and not rocks. Again, Kaf HaChaim, Siman Resh, Chaf Vav, Sif Katan Dalet. Look it up for yourself. He says it, the first three Pashtut reasons, the Rabbanans, but then he brings the Borer Dioraita. You're releasing the Neshama from the tree. Rabotai, comes Cham Ovadia in Yechavedat, in Chelik Aleph, Siman Bet. And he says, I don't know what he's saying. Now, Rabotai, I want to tell you something. The Kaf HaChaim passed away, and he did not finish the Kaf HaChaim, you know that. They had to find somebody that was such a bucky in Kaf HaChaim that he could finish the works of the Kaf HaChaim al derech, the Kaf HaChaim, in his sprach, in his lashon. And the one that everyone in unison agreed was the young, he was very young at that time, the young Chacham Ovadia Yosef, who ended up, many people don't know this, the end of the Kaf HaChaim was not written by the Kaf HaChaim. The end of the Kaf HaChaim was written by Chacham Ovadia. People don't know this. He finished the Kaf HaChaim. And he wrote it in his lashon, in his style, in his mahalach of thinking, which is, that's a ge'onut in itself. We could talk about Chacham Ovadia for forever, but that was amazing. Amazing. And yet, on this Kaf HaChaim, Chacham Ovadia says, I don't understand. Borer b'Shabbat? I mean, from where to where? He says, all 3 points I don't understand. Not even the borer. He says, even the simple points. You might come to touch the flower, smell the flower, pluck the flower, push the tree. He says, even those reasons I don't agree with. He says, Yadua, everyone knows. There's a famous Gemara. The Gemara tells us that if you see an etrog growing on a tree on Shabbat, you're not allowed to touch it. Shema yitlosh. He might pluck it off on Shabbat. But if you see a hadas on Shabbat, you're allowed to touch it. You could smell it. Why? We're not worried that you might pluck it off. Why not? Because this is edible. That's not edible. Something edible we think you're going to pluck off. Something just for smelling reasons, he'll be careful. He'll bend over. He'll bend it over to him without pulling it out or plucking it. And he'll smell it without ripping it off. It says, Chamuvadi's Gemara Mefureshet, that you're allowed to touch the flower and smell it. Now, there are many poskim that say that there's a different problem, like Rav Moshe Feinstein, he was machmir because of mukseh. That's a different point. Let's not talk about the mukseh point now, because that wasn't the Kaf HaChaim's point. Kaf HaChaim says clearly, the reason why he doesn't want you to touch the flower on the tree or the Birkat HaIlanot on Shabbat is because you might come to pluck the flower off. You'll see it in his lashon, he says it. You might come to pull off the flower or push the tree. It says Chamovadia, the Gemara never was choshesh for that. That's why they made a difference between the etrog that you cannot touch while growing on a tree on Shabbat and the hadas that you're allowed to touch. You're allowed to bend it over and smell it. Chamovadi didn't even hold it was mukseh. Rav Moshe holds that's mukseh, whatever it is. But the problem of plucking, no one holds it's a problem. Therefore Chamovadi says even his pashut shots, I don't understand. But the chidush that he said of the Deoraita, that it's borer. Says Chamovadia, what's borer? What are you being borer? You're taking the nishamot out of the flowers of the tree. These nishamot that were dormant and trapped in these trees that were meant to come out as fruit for someone to make a blessing on. And the minute you make a bracha on that fruit, the Maharal says, it releases the neshama that was inside that needed the tikkun. And it goes up the shamayim with the blessing that you made. And now it's allowed to enter Gan Eden. That's borer? Says Chamovadia. By releasing the neshama from the tree, because you made a blessing on the tree, Birkat HaIlanot, and all the neshamot now fly up the shamayim and enter Gan Eden. That's borer? He says borer was learnt out from the Mishkan. It was the Lametet Melachot. He says in the Mishkan, what was the borer? He says they were borer, physical from physical. You were taking the bad from the good. You were taking the psolet from the ochel. He says over here, what's the psolet? What's the ochel? It's not bechlal two physical things. And then Chamovadia says something scary. He quotes a Chatam Sofer. Oy, 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 oy. Chatam Sofer says in Orach Chaim, Siman Nun Aleph, I don't know, maybe I should read to you these words. You'll be able to hear. I can't even say this, but the Chatam Sofer writes, Va'ani Omer, Kol ha'me'arev divrei Kabbalah im ha'alachot ha'poskim chayav mishum kilayim. Anyone that mixes together divrei Kabbalah with divrei halacha, he should know he's over on shatnez. Zorei kilayim. He's over on shatnez. You're mixing two things together that were not meant to be mixed. Don't draw halachot from divrei Kabbalah. Kabbalah's Kabbalah, halachah's halacha. They are two incredible pillars of Klal Yisrael, but they don't mix. Mamish, this is scary. Oh. After that, between me and you, the Chatam Sofer writes just something very powerful. He's on a roll here. He goes on to say, V'chol ha'me'arev sifrei higayon im divrei Torah. You get that a lot. You see, a lot of times you handle with modern rabbis. They start quoting to you philosophy from all different types of works, and Socrates, and this guy, and that guy, and then you want to bring it back to Torah and say that's what the Rambam meant. Says the Chatam Sofer, Kol ha'me'arev sifrei higayon, sifrei philosophy, logic, im divrei Torah, over im choresh shor v'hamoro yachdav. I don't want to tell you who's the shor and who's the chamor. We'll leave that for now. But that's what the Chatam Sofer says. And he says, V'im hu manhig Yisrael, if he's a leader in Klal Yisrael, and that's his rhetoric, that's his Shabbos speech, he mixes politics with Torah, that's his hu manhig b'kilayim. This is the Chatam Sofer. I take all the blame. You thought I was going to say I take no blame, didn't you? No, I stand up for Kavod Torah. I stand up for Kavod Torah. If that's what the Chatam Sofer says, mi pihen anu chayim. Mi pihen anu chayim. But this is what Chacham Ovadia brings. He says, therefore he says, I don't understand. How did the Kaf HaChaim say that this is borer b'Shabbat? It's incredible. You're mixing divrei Kabbalah, neshamot, with divrei halacha. And because of this, says Chacham Ovadia, there's no question that you're allowed to say Birkat HaIlanot on Shabbat. He says, listen, it's better not to, because you always want to be Mekayim all the shitot. And there is a Kaf HaChaim that says no. He says, but Mikar Adin, the letter of the law, let's say that's the last day of Nisan. Let's say that's the last day of the month of Nisan. This guy is a late blossomer. Get it? Flowers? Okay. This guy is a late bloomer. And that's what we're trying to... I get paid, to make those jokes. He's a late bloomer. He's the late Molavleve guy. He comes the last day of Nisan. And it's Shabbat. Says Chacham Ovadia, you say Birkat HaIlanot on Shabbat. The Chaparayim, that last day. Matter of fact, the Aderet would make Birkat HaIlanot on Shabbat in order to be mashlim the mea birachot. Everybody knows that on Shabbat we always have to make up birachot because we don't have the Amidah that we typically have. So we're always looking to make up extra birachot to reach the mea birachot. He used to make Birkat HaIlanot dafka on Shabbat in order to make up the mea birachot. He felt it was an Indian. Not only wasn't it a problem, he felt it was lahefech. Mea berachot. Unbelievable. This is incredible. It's incredible. One year, it's brought in the Sefer of the Stipler Gaon, or Chot Rabbeinu, that the Stipler wasn't feeling well. And it turned out that he had an opportunity one Shabbat when he was feeling better. He went out and made Birkat HaIlanot on Shabbat. The Stipler Gaon in Bnei Brak. He made Birkat HaIlanot. This is fantastic, Rabotai. And if this is the case, you see that really this is a big idea. And finally we come to the last leg of the share, and this is where we start getting into the Yomeh Nisan. Is it only the month of Nisan? Can I make Birkat HaIlanot in any other month? Comes the Birkei Yosef, the Chidah, and he writes, Listen, maybe there will be a svara to say yes. But at the end of the day, there's no question that the Gemara mentioned Nisan. There's a milah just because the Gemara mentioned it. Now, could you say it in Iyar? He says, maybe Mikar Allah. If you missed it, maybe you could make it up in Iyar. Not Adar, but in Iyar. He says, but at the end of the day, there's a milah dafka Nisan. But then we take a look at this magnificent sefer that only Rabbi Gladstein can find. Hashem should bless him. His research is fantastic. Really, what a gift we have in Klal Yisrael when we have him. He brings us a sefer called the Petach Dvir. Beautiful sefer. And he writes over there, why only Nisan? Why? What's the special thing about Nisan? He writes, he brings a Zohar HaKadosh. Now here is where we're starting to fly. The Zohar HaKadosh writes that in the month of Nisan, all the neshamot that were waiting from the previous year to get into Gan Eden are finally allowed in. The month of Nisan is not just the Yitzi'ah on earth. It's not just the Yitzi'ah from the She'abud on earth. It's not just the month of Yitziat Mitzrayim that we went out of Egypt. But every single thing in this world releases from its bondage and goes out to a freedom in the month of Nisan, both in the physical world and in the spiritual world. Zohar HaKadosh. And if the neshamot that were waiting and hanging and longing to finally get into Gan Eden, the month of Nisan, they're allowed in. They go out from there, She'abud and Shamayim, whatever that means, to literally a Ge'ulah, to their promised land, to the Gan Eden. Fantastic. This is unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. Between me and you, we know the famous shmooze that our Chagim are not commemorative. We don't remember Pesach. We relive Pesach every year on the 15th of Nisan. Right? That's the famous Dvar Avram. And if that's the case, every year we go out from a certain avdut that we came into Pesach with. We go out, we're hoping that this Pesach we're going to go out of Corona legamre. I don't know if you guys remember, last year, the height of Corona was Purim to Pesach. But when Pesach came, it went, I don't know, not that it finished, but because obviously there was a gzeira of longer, but it went down a notch. It was not as intense. The intensity last year was Purim to Pesach was, I don't even know if you, I don't want to remember that time. We were all in quarantine and the sirens are outside day and night. All we heard all day was sirens and sirens and sirens. And we were getting messages about, Rabbanim that passed away and people that were rushed and ventilators and not enough ventilators and IV guys coming to the house. You remember, it was a year ago now. It was a year ago now. Hashem, in His mercy, carried us through that. But when Pesach hit, we came out of it a notch. We're hoping this Pesach will be the Gemar. Not just of Corona, but of Galut Legamre. We can finally go home. Enough. What we went through this past year, Gewalt, is unbelievable. But nonetheless, take a look, says the Zohar HaKadosh. This is not only an emancipation, big word, of the living, it's also of the souls, of the neshamot in Shamayim. They go out from their holding place, their prison, their jail, whatever it is in heaven, that they're in a holding zone, and they're finally allowed to enter Gan Eden in the month of Nisan. This is incredible. They experience a Ge'ulah. Fantastic. And that's the pshat. HaChodesh hazeh lachem. This is your month. This is the month you've been waiting for. This is the month that's called Chodesh HaAviv. The word Aviv is broken up into Av, Yud, Bet. The father of 12 months. This month of Nisan is the father of 12 months. 12 months waits for this month. Because this month we go out. This month we go out of all the tzarot of 11 months. The geula of this month literally releases us from all the 11 months of difficulties that we endured just to make it to a Nisan. And you want to hear a good joke? You want to hear a good joke? Paro thought that it was his month. In Egypt, they used to worship the tle, the sheep. The symbol of the month of Nisan is taleh. It's the sheep. Paro said to himself, let me just get into the month of Nisan. That's my strong month. That's my mazal month. That's when I'm going to fight him. Hashem says, you fool, I'm going to drag you into the month that you think you're the strongest, the month that you think your gods are the highest level of mazal, and that's when I'm going to crush you. He thought it was his month. No, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. It's your month. That is a great, magnificent idea, and we wait for this month. We wait for this month to go out, to go out, to go out from all the addictions and all the problems and all the ba'ayot and all the health issues. This month is the month that we literally get this amazing freedom to come out from everything that was holding us back and down. It's the month of Matir Asurim, both on earth and in Shamayim. This is amazing. And if this is the case, Rabotai, hear me well. There has to be a connection between Birkat HaIlanot that releases the neshamot from the trees to go up to Gan Eden. When you make the blessing on that tree, you're releasing all the neshamot, and they can now enter Gan Eden in the month of Nisan. Makes a lot of sense why Birkat HaIlanot now is placed in the month of Nisan. Because the month of Nisan is when all the neshamot are allowed into a Gan Eden from their holding cell. You come now and you activate that process. You walk up to the tree, you make the beracha on the ilan, you are now freeing, releasing Matir Asurim. You're releasing all the neshamot that were locked into this tree. And now they're allowed to come up to Shamayim and in the month of Nisan enter a Gan Eden. You brought them to Gan Eden. You broke them out of jail. Did you realize that Birkat HaIlanot was a spiritual pidyon shvuyim? Pidyon shvuyim. You released the captive. Not just that. In the moment that the Gan Eden is open for all captives to enter, but they can't enter without you. So they need you to make that bracha on the tree. So that at the moment the flower comes out, the neshama is held in that flower, because that's the bud of the future fruit. Where really they would need somebody to make a bracha on that fruit. But now that you come and you make a beracha on the tree, you T.O. all the tree. You knock out all the flowers. You did such a chesed for these neshamot. And you thank Hashem for allowing them into Gan Eden. We have a new idea now. Birkat HaIlanot, says the Aruch HaShulchan, is being mishabeach Hashem on His chesed. How are you mishabeach Hashem on His chesed? By you doing chesed. You're doing incredible chesed. A pidyon shuim. You're breaking out the neshamot from the cell of these trees. You're allowing them to go up in the month of Nisan to a Gan Eden. These are the neshamot hagalmudot. Listen to what you're going to be zeichet to. You hear this now? You're going to fly. Says the El Yerabah and Shulchan Aruch. This is found in El Yerabah, Siman Resh Chaf Vav. Says the El Yerabah, Bimei Nisan, Haro'eh Ilanot Porchot. He says, You see trees that are sprouting in the month of Nisan. Go and make the beracha of Birkat HaIlanot. V'hazahir, and the one that is zahir, to make the bracha on the trees and do the mitzvah Birkat HaIlanot, he's going to be zoiche to the beracha of re'eh, reach bini, kereach hasadeh, asher berach Hashem, v'yiten lecha ha'elohim, mital ha'shamayim, mishmanei ha'aretz, rov dagan v'tirosh, yavdu chamim, yishtachavu lecha b'nei elomim, hevi gvir la'achecha, aor arecha arur, barverecha baruch. Unbelievable. He upteaches that re'eh, reach bini, kereach hasadeh. You know what the reach hasadeh is? The reach hasadeh is the reach of Birkat HaIlanot of the trees. It's the reach hasadeh, the reach of Gan Eden. You can bring the reach hasadeh to Gan Eden. How do you do that? When you make the Birkat HaIlanot on the trees, you release all the neshamot. You did the biggest chesed, matir asurim, pidyon shvuyim. You allow them to get out, break out of their she'bud, out of their slavery, out of their jail cell, locked into these trees. And you're able to elevate them, reach al-bini kereach hasadeh. You can bring them up to Gan Eden. What does Chazal tell us when Yaakov Avinu walks into Yitzchak on the night of Pesach? He says, reach bini kereach hasadeh. I smell Gan Eden on you. I smell Gan. What does the Sadeh have to do with Gan Eden? The Birkat HaIlanot is the zechut of reach bini kereach hasadeh. It's the words of the El Yerabah. He says, you make this beracha, Birkat HaIlanot, you would just mekayim and are mekabel the beracha. Hine re'eh, reach bini kereach hasadeh, asher berach Hashem. And then you zoichet v'yiten lecha lokim mital hashamayim mishmanei haaretz. Mi amar lemi, who said these berachot? Yitzchak Avinu said this to Yaakov on the night of Pesach. On the night of Pesach. That was the night that these berachot were made. Wow, look at that. Let's connect the dots now. The El Yerabah just told me, when I make the beracha Birkat HaIlanot, I'm going to be zochet to which berachot? The berachot that were given the night of Pesach? You know what that means? That's amazing. What that means is, and my Rebbe told me, Rabbi Rabinovich Shlita told me, he said to me, Chaim David, when you make the Birkat HaIlanot, and you released all the neshamot, and they go up to Gan Eden, you just released them from their bondage, but you brought them to the Shefa Ein Sof. Now Hashem is mechuyav to you, midah keneged midah. Now you can come to a Pesach. Now I have to give you Shefa Ein Sof. It's amazing. My Rebbe used to tell me, he says to me, we used to talk over the years, different problems, different issues came up in life. He used to tell me, go light a oil candle for the neshamot hagalmudot. I said, Rebbe, what is that? He says, these are the neshamot that are trapped in shamayim, that need sometimes just one more zichut to be allowed into Gan Eden, and they're being held back for small things. Your shemen could be something of a zichut that will give them, to allow them to be the one to enter Gan Eden. He says, if you help them, they'll have to stand in front of Kisei HaKavod, Midin Hakarat HaTov, and daven to the Eibishter and help you in your problem. So light a candle of oil, Neshamot Galmudot, and say the following: Hareini madlik shemen lameor le'ilui nishmat haneshamot hagalmudot. All the neshamot that are trapped in heaven, that weren't yet granted access to their place in Gan Eden. Let this be the zichut that will access them entry into Gan Eden. And then you turn to the neshamot and say, neshamot, azarti lachem, I helped you, right? Because in that world, you can't do anything anymore for yourself. I'm still in the world asiyah. I can still be po'el. I'm being po'el, help for you. But now, I don't want to say the words you owe me, because I don't want to sound wrong. But now, hakarat tov. Go in front of Kisei HaKavod, because you have access. And you ask for me on the needs that I need, and you're mefaret the needs that you want. I've done this a few times. I don't want to exhaust this too much, because this was a sod that he was telling me. But chas v'shalom, we should never need problem. But if something came up, I did it, and I saw crazy stuff. This is a very similar idea tonight. Tonight we're also releasing the neshamot from a certain bondage, maybe even worse than neshamot galmudot. At least they're in heaven. My Rebbe told me the galmudot are high neshamot. Special neshamot. Good high neshamot. They're just missing a hairline crack of a mashu. Your oil can be that little maku patish that pushes them through. But they're high people. And they can go to bat for you. No, kal v'chomer, the neshamot that are stuck down here, they aren't even in a worse situation. They're stuck down here, hoping that someone will come along and make a bracha on the apple that they're going to be stuck in, the fruit that they're going to be dormant in. Sometimes the chances are not good in their favor. They might end up by a goy. They might end up by an animal. They might end up by a Jew that doesn't make a bracha. That's the worst. That's the worst. They're like, please, just make the bracha, really? Now you can knock out the whole tree in one bracha. That's the power of Birkat HaIlanot. It deserved a complete siman lifnei atzma from Maran Shulchan Aruch. This is amazing. But at the same time, you matir asurim, pidyon nefesh. In the month that Gan Eden is opened for all the neshamot that are waiting to get in. Hence Birkat HaIlanot should be done in Nisan. Because look at the understanding of the why. Because now that you release them, they don't have to wait 12 months. No. Chodesh Aviv, Av Yud Bet. You release them in the month of the father of 12 months. The month that Gan Eden is open for the waiting incumbent nishamot. And if that's the case, what a chesed you did. Says the Eivishter, oh, you released my nishamot. You allowed them to come to the Shefa Ein Sof. Now, midah keneged midah. You just made a keli to be mekabel shefa en sof. Now bring that to the night of Pesach, the night that the 10 greatest blessings of history come down every year, Leil Pesach, on the Seder. The night that Yitzchak gave it to Yaakov Avinu is the night that it comes down to Klal Yisrael. But this year I have a keli ready to receive and accept midah keneged midah. I did Birkat HaIlanot. I'm able now to actualize the berachot. I'm able to be mekabel those amazing berachot. Remember what the Zohar HaKadosh told us. The night of Pesach, all gates in Shamayim are open. The gates of blessings are open. The gates of Gan Eden is open, like we said. The neshamot can enter finally after 12 months of waiting. Everything's open that night. It's a night that you can receive more than you can ever get. If that's the case, this midah keneged midah is something now that we can chap. We have a week left to the great night of Yiten Lecha Elokim. How could you show up without your keli? How could you show up without Birkat HaIlanot? How can you not be merachem on all those neshamot that are in those trees that now in the month that the door is open, you can release them and finally enter the Shefa Ein Sof? Rabotai, this is a yesod and a sod. It's both. It's a yesod and it's a secret. It's a sod. We could be zocheh this Pesach to the Shefa Ein Sof, to the Geula Ein Sof, but maybe better than all of that. Just like we were matir asurim, we let them out of bondage. Borei Olam says, I built this world on midah keneged midah. Now you have a zechut to be let out from a galut. You're able to be let out from problems, let out from addictions, let out from all your personally self-inflicted Egypt. I'm going to let you out from your Mitzrayim. I'm going to let you out from the galut of Mitzrayim. Now we can be zocheh to the Shefa Ein Sof. Thank you for listening, gentlemen.